Good morning, sunshine. So, first thing we're going to do today is go over project 1. Now, if you've already sent it to me, that's fine. If you want to get a copy of it and look at it, and go as I go over the answers, you can correct it and resend it to me. That's fine. I want you to get 5 points on this. So, by all means, take your time. If you haven't sent it to me, just correct it and then send it to me. So there are 5 questions. First question says to describe the electron theory of electricity. Again, the words flow from the negative to the positive of electrons. Somehow, however you want to arrange that sentence, that's what I need there. Electricity is a flow, organized flow of electrons from the negative to the positive. That's the answer. However you want to write that sentence. Cool. Now, question number 2 says how many 500 watt loads can you plug into a 20 ampere capacity load line? Yes? Now, if you have 20 amps and you have 120 volts, remember? 120 volts, you always have 120 volts. That's 2,400 potential watts. If you have 500 watt loads, 2,400 divided by 500 is 4.8. But since you can't have 0.8 of a light, the answer is 4. Now, if this is going to get, the answer is 4, quick. But if you were working in a theater and you had the opportunity to hang 500 watt lamps and you had to use that one circuit, you could turn the Grand Master down to 80% and then all 5 would work. So, what a great idea. Somebody loved that idea. Katie loved that idea. Now, the second part of the question is, how many 500 watt loads will fit into a 50 ampere capacity line? Yes? Again, using West Virginia, 50 amp line, which again is the cable from the tower to your home or to the building. If you were able to draw off of that, 50 times 120 volts, yes, is 6,000 divided by 500. The answer to question 2 is 12. And the formula you used is West Virginia, watts equals volts times amps, or pi, power equals intensity times electrical potential. Yes? So that's the answers to questions 1 and question 2. Hopefully you're still on board. Question 3 is literally this. Draw a series, draw a parallel, 3 loads, 4 loads. Bam. Yes, show a power source. If you want, again, with a switch and a fuse, this is the main, the power source is the main. Yes, the switch, if you just want to put a little break in it that has a little uptick, that's great. A fuse typically is a circle with a little wavy line in it. Again, if you want to do that, great. I'm not going to count off on those. Really, what I want you to do is draw a series and show me that you understand that a series is 3 in a row. And then draw a parallel where you have 4 different drop lines. Yes? So that's the answer to question 3. Again, taken straight from your notes. Okay? Now, question 4 is where it gets kind of crazy. Question 4 says, what is the total resistance of a load when you have a 1,000 watt lamp and a 750 watt lamp wired in parallel, and show your calculations. Now, you have to go to that little chart where it says the resistance to the whole in a parallel circuit is equal to the resistance of 1 over R1, which is the load of the first piece, plus 1 over R2. So you have to solve for R in both those situations and then solve for the entire equation. Again, I'm going to use the 1 over R total is equal to 1 over R1 plus 1 over R2, because it's going to give you a little close-up on this. And then because, again, in that little pie chart, there are 3 different ways of finding R, but the only one where we have, the quickest way to do it is to use E, which is electrical potential, yes, which is 120, volts are always 120, and then the watts of the power, in the first instance is 1,000, and the second instance is 750. So you have to solve for each one separately. So in the first case, R is equal to 120 times 120 over 1,000. So R is E squared. 120 times 120 over 1,000 is what R is. In the first instance, that's 14,400 over 1,000, which equals to 14.4. So that's the resistance of your first number, first load. The second load is 120 times 120 e squared over 750. So 14,400 over 750, which equals to 19.2. And again, those are in the denominator. So 1 over 14.4 plus 1 over 19.2, using a little calculator, is 0.069 plus 0.052. Then you have to, because in the left side of the equation is 1 over R total, you have to flip the equations and switch sides. So it becomes 1 over 0.12 is equal to R total. If this doesn't make sense to you, it's algebra. I'm sorry, I apologize. It's the only math in the whole equation. Just write it down. Cody's going to give you a nice tight look at that. Just write it down. Trust me, it's true. If you divide 1 by 0.12, you get 8.26 is equal to R. Yes? So that's the answer to the equation. If you get somewhere between around 8.5 or 8.25, great. If you're getting numbers like 30 and 75 or whatever other numbers you're going to get, you may be using the wrong equation or using them incorrectly. Yes? Go ahead and correct your calculations. If you got it right in the first place, congratulations. If you use the other equations to figure this out, that's perfectly fine. It's just that this one, to me, is the easiest of the three options. You should still wind up with 8.26 as your total resistance to two loads in a parallel system, which is the question. Okay? I apologize. There will be no more math except for the next step, which is going to be easy math. Yes? Now, the easy math is, and again, if you want to send me emails, ask me questions, call me, I'll be glad to go back over with this individually. Just re-watch this part of the video. All right? The last question on project number 1, what is the voltage reading after each lamp in a circuit when you have 3 500-watt lamps wired in series? Show your calculations. Now, trust me, if you don't want to show your calculations, if you just want to do it the easy way, that's fine. I told you last time, the voltage of the entire system, if you have the same loads, 3 500-watt loads is the same load. If it was 1 amp, or excuse me, 1 volt, it's the same load, it's divided evenly. If you had, again, a 500, 1,000, and 500, it's not divided evenly. But if it's 3 loads that are 500 each, if you have 120 volts in potential, the system will automatically adjust to divide the load among the work that needs to be done. So if there are 3 loads of equivalent wattage, and there's 120 potential volts, then each load will use 40 volts. So before you get to any of the workload, you have 120 volts. After the first load, you put a voltage meter on it, it will say 80. After the second one, it will say 40. After the third one, it will say 0. If you were, that's the answer to the question, 80, 40, 0. Again, Cody's going to give you a little close-up here of the mathematical solution. For those of you who must have the math, there it is. E over R squared, excuse me, E is equal to I over R. Solving for R, E is equal to E squared over P, which we've already used in the last equation. Gives you 80, 40, 0. Yes? He'll let you linger on that for a second, just so for those of you who have to have the math, there it is. For those of you who trust me that the load will be divided evenly, let me throw this last little caveat in. If you were to add another 500-watt load in that series, suddenly you added a refrigerator, plugged it in the wall. Now you had 4 instead of 3. The system will automatically, again, subdivide, and instead of having 40 volts used at each load, you will automatically have 30 volts used at each load. The system will automatically divide evenly among themselves, assuming they're all the same loads. Yes? That's it for the math in the class. Yes? Again, correct your math. I want you to get it right. I hope you understand it. If you don't understand it, just give me a call or just go back or just let it wash over you like water over a bridge. Yes? Let the bridge collapse. Just let it live. But that's the answers to the first questions. They get a lot easier. There's no more math. Yes? So don't drop the class just because of question 4. Yes? All right. Now, we're going to watch, first of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about, I'm going to go to the light booth, show you a little bit how a light designer works, the couple of instruments, ellipsoidals, and Fresnels they work with. Then I'm also going to show you a light board And just again, we will go back specifically into what the McCandless system is in more detail later. But for this time, I think it's just important to see how a McCandless system works out to where you have 9 basic stage areas. The one I'm going to show you has 6. But you have 2 fronts, 2 sides, a down and a back to each of these 6 areas that I'm going to show you on the light board. And then we're going to have a couple of videos, one showing you is a designer, Broadway designer who designed Spider-Man, and also I'm not going to remember the other one, but it's a very impressive one. Anyway, he's going to talk about the process that a lighting designer goes through, and then another little video showing you how lights can be used to affect the stage lighting. Yes, so a couple videos today, and that's it for the class. We'll see you next time. Good morning, sunshines. Today we're going to talk about lighting design. Yay! Now, I don't mean to slight costume design by not talking about costume design, but really, other than coordinating maybe color, maybe period, maybe style, in the sense that if you're doing a 15th, 16th, 17th century design where you have people with peignets or hoop skirts, you have to deal with that sort of getting through doors and things like that. For the most part, the costume designer works separately from the set designer. Whereas the lighting designer and the set designer are going to work pretty much hand in hand because you're using the same space. Usually where the flies are above the theater, you either have an electric or you can have a fly system that involves the scenery. And so there's a great deal of coordination between the 2 design elements. So it's helpful to spend a little time. Again, there's an entire class on lighting design. I'm not going to try to teach you to be a lighting designer today in class, but at least let you understand where the lighting designer is coming from so that you can have a basis for strengthening your argument if you need to move something to a different place or have something happen at a different rate, speed, that sort of thing. You can at least talk coherently to that person. Yes. First of all, there are 5 things that a lighting designer deals with. They can make 5 different choices in the course of designing the lights. The first is the type of instrument they're going to be able to use. I'm going to show you 2 basic instruments. I'll tell you about 5 and how they're used. The other is direction. When they figure out their light plot, they're going to figure out which angle they're going to come from. There's a man, Stanley McCandless, who developed a system back in the 20s and 30s when electrical lighting first came into vogue that is still the basic system for most lighting designers today, even though there are other options within that, and other people may. The McCandless is where you start from, though. The color of the light, you can add color to it through gel or through various LEDs or different colors as they exist. You can change the focus on it. You can make them a hard focus or a soft focus or in between. We'll talk about a little bit about how to do that. And the intensity. When you cue the show, when you put the cue in the light board, we'll talk more about lighting the show in a little bit with the light board. As you adjust the light cues, light cue is any change in a lighting level. And so you're going to need, if the lights turn on when the refrigerator door is open, you have to have a light cue for that. If the light turns on when somebody walks in the room and flips the light switch, you have to turn the light on for that. If dawn happens and the sun comes up or the sun goes down, you have to have a light cue for that in order to make the light intensity change or the color shift, that sort of thing. So anytime there's a change in the environment, lighting-wise, that's a light cue. And you'll deal with those in tech rehearsals. First of all, just to talk about a couple of types of instruments. The most common, the most popular nowadays is what's called an ERS, an ellipsoidal reflector spotlight. They are also sometimes called LECOs because a company named LECO, L-E-K-O, developed this back in the 20s. Really, it was the reason why McCandless was able to come up with his system, because one of the things about an ERS is it focuses and fine-tunes the light. Again, there's a little diagram here that shows you exactly how it does it. It's through a system called an ellipsoidal reflector. In other words, an ellipse is an oval, three-dimensional oval, and everything that comes out of the light source, the light energy that travels toward the object continues to go toward the object, but the light energy that's going away from the object is gathered by the reflector and sent through to a second focal point. The nice thing about that, and again, here is an living example of an ellipsoidal reflector spotlight. This is an Altman Fest spotlight, ERS. A couple things. This is the C-clamp. You can adjust this. Again, you're going to have your crescent wrench on a lanyard to help so that you can tie this to your belt buckle so you don't drop it up from the grid. But you can use this to adjust the C-clamp. You can adjust this to use, and again, there's some little levers here on the side that you can use to take the C-clamp down. This is called the yoke of the instrument. The yoke can be raised, lowered, that sort of thing. The way you take the back off, there's a little thumb screw right here that lifts the back off. And if you have a lamp that is bad, you can take the back off, and you can see that there's a lamp inside of it. This is what's called a lamp. This slips right down into the reflector spotlight, and you just screw it back on. And then that's how the reflector uses the power from the lamp to reflect the instrument. At the second focal point, you have the opportunity to put in shutters. These are shutters which can shape the light. You can also put in gobos. A gobo is a little piece of tin. This one has stars on it, yay for stars. This one has a window on it, so yay for windows. And then you can just slip this down into the shutter slot, and then you can focus onto that. There's a little knob right here. The front of the instrument is what's called a lens train. The lens is on the inside, and you can loosen this, and the lens train can either go out or go in to sharpen or fine focus, or to dull the focus. All those are different ways of focusing the instrument. So once you figured out what instrument you want, if you want to use an ellipsoidal, where you're going to hang it, I'll show you a little video here in a second about how to hang a lighting instrument. But then once you've hung it, then you can figure out your focus. Then you can put in a colored gel. There's a little gel frame with a little blue gel in it. Yes, the gel just comes right back out. It's often called a filter because it filters the light. So you just change the filter, put that into the front of the instrument, and you can change the type of color that it is. There are two basic bases for lamps. This is called a bifocus base. You can see there's a couple of flanges here. It slips in, there's a little spring inside, and then you turn it a quarter turn and it holds. This one's a little more popular. It's just a pin base, two little pins there, and you can see there's a little crimp there. There's a little piece on the inside that sort of crimps down and that holds it in place. But this is just a pin connector as opposed to the bi-base. I'm going to take this out. And then the other type of instrument that we use is what's called a Fresnel. A Fresnel is, as opposed to an ellipsoidal or ERS, which is used to fine tune the light and make it very sharp. This is a Fresnel. Again, you can see the Fresnel lens. The way this is a little bit easier, a little less complicated instrument. You just pull that little pin right there and it flips open, and there's your lamp inside. Again, your pre-focus base, you can sort of see the flange in there. You slip that back in. The lens itself has got rims on it, so that what it does is it takes the light, and this was actually developed by a man named Auguste Fresnel, who was a lighthouse operator. And he tried to flare out the light as wide as it could. So he developed this lens that allowed the light, again, that was going this way to go through that way, but the light that was going out here, he honed it in to make it a nice soft light that the ships could see more of the light as it spread out among the sea. And so the theater designers took it, put it into a lighting instrument. And so whereas this light is meant to fine tune the light, this light is meant to spread the light. Yes, which are basic two types of instruments you can choose between. There are also these things called par cans. Par cans are extremely durable. If you're using outdoor lights, they are all encased in the same lamp, lens. All that is all in one. And so it's very durable for outdoor lighting, that sort of stuff. For concert lighting, for quick directional lighting. They also work well for colored moves and that sort of thing. Strip lights, again, nowadays, old school, when you went into your auditoriums, you would have these huge strip lights that were on the battens above your head, and they had glass frames in them that had the color lights. You have your red, blues, greens, yellows in them. Nowadays, the strip lights are usually LEDs. LED lights are light emitting diodes. They come in 7 different colors depending on the type of metal that you're using to transmit the electricity. The problem, they're nice and pure and clean and bright. The problem is, as you get to the lower end of the dimming curve, which may not make any sense to you, but as you get them to go less and less bright, they start to flicker a little bit, which incandescent lamps such as these. When you have tungsten, as it goes to the lower end, or as you get it dimmer and dimmer, it dims very nicely through the lower end as it cools off. LEDs sort of jump around, flash a little bit, so they're still improving that technology. But those are the basic choice. First choice, what type of instrument. Second choice, where to hang it from. Again, here's a little introduction to the McCandless system.
Lights are a very important resource in the theater industry. Obviously, they allow you to see the actors and what they're doing, but when used with skill, they can also set the mood of a scene. We're going to show you how to light a stage using something called the Stanley McCandless method, a lighting technique created by Stanley McCandless. He was a theatrical lighting consultant from Chicago that went on to create one of the most commonly used lighting methods today. But more about that later. First, you need to know how to hang your light fixture. There are a few pre-steps you need to perform before you go up on your ladder. The first is to get a wrench. Make sure that there's a wrist strap or idiot string on it so that you don't drop it. Next, get your ERS light fixture. Now that you've done this, you can get up on your ladder. Once you're up there, the first thing you need to do is finger tighten the C-clamp on the ERS until it is snug on the bar. Then, take your wrench and do a 1/4 to 3/4 turn until it is very tight on the bar. Just be sure not to over-tighten or else you won't be able to get the fixture off. After the fixture is snug on the bar, you need to attach a safety cable. Simply attach one end of the cable to the fixture, wrap the other end around the bar, then attach it to the fixture again. The fourth step is to attach the barn doors and open them. However, on this fixture, you won't be needing barn doors. And finally, you plug the fixture into the power outlet. Your fixture is hung and ready to go. Now that you know how to hang a light, you also need to know where to put them. One of the most commonly used lighting techniques in the theater is the Stanley McCandless method. It is focused on 5 points of light. Backlight, which is light from behind the actor. Side light, light coming from the sides of the actor. Top light, light from above the actor. And key and fill light, lights that are angled in front of the actor. Backlight, side light, and top light are all used to give depth and dimension to the stage and the actors, while key gives a warm feeling and fill light provides a cooler mood to the stage. However, in the film industry, key and fill are different. In filmmaking, key is your brighter, more dominant light, while fill helps light up any shadowed areas. Once you have those 5 important points of light ready, your stage should look a little something like this.
You've got to go through me.
Hopefully this video has taught you how to hang a light fixture and properly light a stage. Thank you.
Yay, a couple high school students can do it, you can do it. The basic idea is that you're going to create various areas of lighting. Again, we'll show you with the light board here in a second how that creates the light on the stage. But on the map of the stage, you can see that we come up with some areas, A, B, C, D, E, and F. And then you have 6 different lights pointed at each of those areas. You have 2 front lights at 45 degrees from each other. You have 2 side lights from 90 degrees or 180 degrees from each other. You have a down light from above, and you have a backlight from behind. And between those 6 lights, 2 from the front, 2 from the side, 1 from the top, 1 from the back, you have what's called 180 degrees of coverage, so that you can make a person look like it's in daylight and brightly lit with the front light and the side light, well, with all of them. You can make a person look mysterious by hiding them, putting them in silhouette with just the backlight. You can shape them, which is what the side light does, shapes them a little bit. Again, the top light separates the person from the background. And so if you need to punch a person forward, just turn on the top light, which doesn't light the background but does light the actor, that sort of thing. This was the basic idea behind them. The second layer of lighting design is to create the mood or the atmosphere, which is mostly done through color. Texture can also be used when we talk about gobos, so you can add different textures to it. But usually if it's nighttime, it's dark blue. If it's sunrise, it's you've got the oranges and the reds that come up. If you're creating something that's happy, it's more pink. If you're creating something that's sort of morose or scary, it can often be red, that sort of stuff. If somebody's in love, passion, of course, a little bit more lavender, that sort of thing. Also specials, as you consider, as the lighting designer is considering the show, they'll look for times when they can use gobos or when they can use flash lights, strobe lights. You can also, a lot of theaters have backdrops that have stars in them. And so there are this handful of little tricks that lighting designers have in their bag that can bring out smoke, even though it's not necessarily electrical. It's something that can be controlled. A smoke machine can be controlled through a light board. And so things like smoke or snowflakes, so oftentimes have snow machines that can be controlled by a light board because you have to turn electricity on to make it work. So those would be called special effects. And then any kind of special lights, for instance, practical, we'll call them practicals, lamps. If you have a set designer, and this is where you really coordinate as a set designer and a lighting designer, when you're putting lamps on stage, when you're putting sconces on stage, when you're putting the light in the refrigerator, when you're putting the light in the radio when things turn on, so that you can make the reality of the moment look like it's actually happening, when in actuality it's just theatrical magic that's making all those things happen. Never trust an actor to actually turn a light on. It's always done through a light cue on a light board. That's just for you to know. Again, the light cues are done during tech rehearsal. Usually there are three basic types of tech rehearsal. One is where you just have the stage manager and the director. Those are called dry techs. You just sit down and discuss where in the show the light cues go. Again, as a set designer, it is often helpful to know where the light cues are going to be. So even though you may not have to physically be there when they're talking about it with the director, it is helpful to talk with the lighting designer so that you know what the lighting designer is going to attempt to do, so you don't put a piece of scenery in their way when they're attempting to do it. Oftentimes, coordinating off-stage spaces, like if the lighting designer wants to have a light boom, which is something that stands up on the floor, you have lights on. If you have a wagon that rolls off stage, you have to figure out how wide the wagon is to fit between the booms. In certain shows, certain things win. So for instance, if you're doing Peter Pan, flying wins. Peter Pan has got to fly. And Peter Pan flying on a line means that you can't have any scenery up there, you can't have any lights up there. So again, it depends on what type of show it is as to what the importance is, whether it's scenery that wins or lighting that wins in a particular moment. Again, the better you can coordinate with one another, the better everybody can be happy. But as you're going through your cues, then you have your cues that involve everybody but the actors. I call them wet techs, but those are where you have scenery move. The first time you have a scene shift happen on stage, you should always have it happen in light. In other words, don't have the light cue happen, because you need all the technicians, all the actors, everyone to know what's going to happen and how things move, so they can understand how dangerous things could be. Because again, once you turn those lights out and you have actually things happen in the blackout, again, you should have glow tape available at all times to glow tape things so that actors don't run into things and things don't run into actors. But you need to have them experience the set shift, and the light cue was going to be in the tech rehearsal first, and then do it in light, which usually means in blackout. A lot of times lighting designers can add a little blue light or a little gobo light to add a little bit of visibility. It's amazing how much having an offstage glow, clip lights, that sort of stuff, it helps the actors to see on stage, but also doesn't allow the audience to see what's happening on stage. Anytime you have a shift that happens where the audience can see the shift happening, it's called an a vista shift. My rule of thumb is 7 seconds. You can do if you can do a shift and without any danger to anyone in 7 seconds or less in a blackout, fine. The thing about it is an audience will start to lose the train of thought and start thinking about things like dinner or what they're doing after the show or other stuff if it takes longer than 7 seconds. And so if it takes 10 seconds in blackout, turn some lights on so that people can see it, have it be an obvious to shift, and then they can at least be entertained by watching the shift happen. Again, a lot of times directors can be helpful in this matter because the director can choreograph scene shifts where you actually have stage crew work walking around in actual costumes, that sort of stuff, which makes the costume designer very happy. But again, figuring out those solutions to how those things happen is how you coordinate, collaborate with other designers. And even though you do coordinate, and again, in that last instance, collaborate with your costume designer, mostly the person you're having to deal with all these different changes and shifts is the lighting designer. Cool. Again, quick tutorial. We're going to cut to working with the light board, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Sure. Welcome to the light board. Yay. There are a couple things about it you need to know. First of all, one of the buttons you can use, which you probably should not use, is this little button called the blackout button. When the blackout button is on, nothing will work because the blackout button has been pushed. So one of the first things you want to make sure is that blackout button is off. Yes? Yay. Then, first of all, these are all called faders. These are submasters, particularly here at the bottom. These up here control individual lights on the stage. So whatever is plugged into circuit 1 happens there, whatever in 2 happens there, whatever in 3 happens there. And so these are the individual circuits that are up on the grid as the lights are plugged into each circuit. Yes, some are front lights, some are down lights, some are back lights, some are mood lighting, some are specials. Anyway, we have 155 circuits out there that we can plug individual lights in. And again, the way you shift from one, this now becomes 41 through 80, 81 through 120. So you can switch and change which of these faders control which. We're back to 1 through 40 now, just to keep it there. The submasters down here have taken these individual circuits and combine them into their areas. So for instance, in the graphic that I've shown you before, you have area A, B, C, D, E, and F. And so I've got area A, B, C, D, E, and F. Yes, we also have G, H, and I, but that's because we have a bigger stage. I'll stick through A through F. And so what we have are, bring up area A, we have 2 front lights, 2 side lights, a down light, and a back light focused in area A. And so those are down right. Area B is down center. Again, 2 front lights, a back light, down light, side light. Area C, stage left. It looks like a couple lights are blown out, but that's okay. Area D, we're not going to show this week. Area D is up right. Area E is up center. And area F is up left. Yes. And so you can create from your dimmers, you can combine, and again, I don't know which of these, let's see, where does the number, circuit 3 goes into area A, and so you can see that 3 is up in A, but it's also up when I bring in, it's area 5. Which one has 3? 4, I guess 3 is extra. Yay. 5 goes to area A, and then when you bring up area A, it's also included in the submaster. Yes. And then as you can combine, as the actors move about the stage, you can bring up various areas to bigger, slower dimensions, and then you record each of those looks into individual light cues. And the way the show works is once you have the shows recorded, and again, you can see that we've added the color to this and the gobos to this, so you have the whole overall light cue happen. But that's preset when the audience comes in, and then the first thing that happens is the house lights go to half. Then you have what's called the Katie light come up. Katie is our introduces our plays and tells people about the fire marshal and all that sort of stuff. And then the Katie light will go out, and then we'll go back to a blackout to begin the show, and then you have the actual act light happen on the stage. Yes, and so theoretically, once the show is gone through a tech rehearsal, the only button that the light board operator will have to hit is this go button. Yes. Again, it's more complicated than that, but for set designer purposes, that's pretty much all you need to know about how this works. All right, thank you all very much. We'll see you next time.
Good stage lighting can add a lot of things to your productions. First, it helps the audience to see the actors, sets, costumes, and props clearly. It also helps to make things like stage lights, curtains, and other backstage items that we don't want the audience to see kind of vanish on stage. This is called lighting the stage for visibility, or seeing what needs to be seen.
Good stage lighting also helps the audience figure out what time of day it is, where the play takes place, and other aspects of the physical environment the director wants to establish.
This lighting lets the audience know that the play takes place inside a house, probably at night. since the lamp is on. This type of lighting, where there's an obvious source of light visible to the audience, in this case the lamp, is called motivated light.
This lighting suggests an outdoor scene shortly after daybreak in a wooded area with the sun shining through trees. This type of light, where the audience can't see an obvious source of light on stage, is called random light.
This lighting is evening, outdoors, with a night sky and stars. It's another example of random light.
Establishing the environment on stage is when we use lighting to help the audience figure out what time of day it is, where the play takes place, and other aspects of the physical environment of the play.
Hi, welcome to this introduction to stage lighting. My name is Marty Fowler.
And I'm Bob Fowler. Good stage lighting does several things. As we've seen, it helps the audience see the actors, sets, props, and costumes clearly, and can also tell the audience what time of day it is, where the play takes place, and what environment the director wants to establish.
Good lighting also helps the director show the audience where to look on stage, where the audience's attention should be drawn. This is called placing the action. Generally, the audience's attention will be drawn to the brightest area of the stage. One of the most used lighting instruments is a Fresnel. A Fresnel is a medium throw spotlight that uses a special lens to give a soft-edged light. See the circles in the lens of the Fresnel? These circles help to give the Fresnel a controlled yet soft light. It can be focused by moving the lamp and the reflector closer or farther from the lens. The edges of the light from a Fresnel can be squared off somewhat by using a barn door. Fresnels are usually used above the stage from the electrics to light the mid-stage and upstage areas.
I'm here to enlighten you, no pun intended, about an element in our lives that probably a lot of us take for granted. And that element would be light. If you think about it, without light, nothing in our world could exist as we know it. Light is this ephemeral substance. It has a huge effect, of course, on what we see, but also on how we see it. My mentor, Jennifer Tipton, used to say, 99% of the audience and perhaps humanity is unaware of the lighting, but 100% is affected by it. In the theater, light creates the visual context. It provides the lens through which we experience a theatrical event. A lighting designer crafts and manipulates the medium of light to tell a story, to inform the style of production, and to evoke a particular emotional response. The big question is, how do we do it? I mean, how do we accomplish this kind of objective? Well, before I can get into that, I think it's important I talk a little bit about the nature of light and how we see. Think of light as, the physicians or the physicists define light as electromagnetic radiation that can be perceived by the eye. But I think you should think about it as this vibrating wave of radiant energy that's emanating from the sun or bouncing off a reflective surface like the moon or the sky, or radiating from these artificial sources you see here. If you look at this image, you see this is a beam of white light, or a wave of white light, being broken up into its component parts by a prism. You can see that every color of the visible spectrum is contained in white light. And the spectrum ranges from red at one end to blue and violet at the other. Now, we've all seen a more compelling version of the spectrum than this graphic representation, probably on the misty morning of a summer day. You've all witnessed a rainbow. It's actually, a rainbow occurs when light is broken up, or sunlight is broken up into its component parts by tiny water droplets in the atmosphere. So when light enters the eye, it strikes certain receptors, you've probably all heard of rods and cones, that are part of the retina, which you can see there, which is a layer of millions of photosensitive cells. And these cells translate light energy into electrical energy, which is then processed by the brain to create the sense of sight. Also in this region of the eye, there are these other receptors called ganglia, which produce hormones in varying quantities based on the available light. For example, there's a hormone called melatonin, which is responsible for circadian rhythms or your body clock, when you wake up, when you sleep, when you eat, etc. In situations of decreased light levels, of low light levels, like when you turn your bedside lamp off at night, melatonin will increase. The ganglia will increase more production of melatonin, which stimulates the onset of sleep. In other situations, under bright light, for example, the melatonin decreases, and depending on the quantities, you could experience discomfort, disorientation. It kind of reminds me of why I never sleep very well when I forget to turn the lights off at night. Now, color is also a very important part of how we perceive light and how we feel about things that we see. For example, under red light, our appetite is stimulated, our heart rate may increase. I read a study in the Huffington Post that cited evidence that on sunny days, people actually feel more upbeat about the stock market, and under red light or warm light, they want the spicier sauce, they feel like the person they're with is more attractive. So it probably explains, like, you don't see a lot of cool or blue light in a high-end restaurant or a brothel. I mean, as a matter of fact, this is the red light district in Amsterdam, so now maybe you know why it's the red light district and not the green light district. And speaking of green is considered the most relaxing color for the human eye. There's studies that confirm that it actually has a restful effect on the body. It can dilate the blood vessels, slow breathing, and some people think it's the association of green with our ancestral habitat that makes it so beneficial. And blue, another color that's very common, it's associated with ethereality, coolness, serenity. The city of Glasgow actually installed blue street lighting in certain neighborhoods, and they experienced a big drop-off in the crime rate. Now, my thinking was, well, maybe it was that it calmed everybody down, but it could have been that it was so hard to see, there was no activity. Now, one thing that's also important to remember is that light is kind of subjective. Color perception is subjective. It changes depending on certain factors, such as race or ethnic background or age or gender. There was this study where males reported that red outfits actually make females seem more attractive, yet women reported that the color of a male's outfit didn't make any difference in terms of attractiveness. Now, the women here may beg to differ with the study, and I don't think I can really blame you. The important thing to remember is that there's a clear physiological, psychological relationship between light and humans that's been part of our DNA for generations. Part of my job as a lighting designer is to study these relationships, is to understand that any choice we make, no matter how small, can have a profound effect on perception. And part of my personal study is looking at light in nature, studying the work of the great artists who can render light in 2 dimensions in amazing ways on a canvas. This is an image of the desert at twilight. You can see how the light from the sun and the sky color the landscape in magical ways. Or this incredible morning light through the stained glass windows, that it's like a collaboration between man and nature. Or an image at sunset that shows how rich and varied the color of light can be at this time of day. And then the work of these artists, this is Degas, Edward Hopper, Renoir, All of them see light slightly differently, but they all manage to create a sense of time and place and evoke a real emotional response in the viewer. And this is what I try to aspire to when I create light for the theater. I'm going to show you a quick demonstration of how we tell stories through light, how we manipulate light to tell a story and to express intention and to affect perception. So we should kill all the stage lights. We're going to go to black in the theater. Now, can you go to cue number 1, please? Okay, so the objective of this exercise is, this is a monologue, let's say. Adam is about to speak, although he knows he doesn't really have to say anything. I've decided that there are only two visible sources of light in the room. A candle and moonlight. Now, the candle, you can see barely lights his face. We'll get it closer so you get a little bit of light. But the sense of moonlight is created by the slash of a window on the background, and then it's repeated or continued on his torso. So that communicates the idea of moonlight. I started with the idea of candlelight. You can see a little bit of it on his face, but it's not enough to sustain this monologue or keep the audience awake. Remember melatonin, everybody. So my objective is, how do I maintain the integrity of this idea but still give enough light to make the scene happen? So I have this source, this discrete source, that's going to fade up in a slow count that will hopefully augment but not change the idea that I've created here. So you can go on the next cue. So now just watch very slowly. So imagine if you were in the audience, you wouldn't really see this happening. So you can imagine over the course of the monologue, this light is hidden, you're not aware that it's there, and slowly it fades up, and the monologue continues, nobody falls asleep, you maintain your interest. Thank you very much, Adam. I appreciate it. Excellent job. So this was an example of our process. And then if you expand it to on a larger scale, such as The Lion King, it's really the same kinds of decisions we're making. For The Lion King, our mandate was to create the sense of an unending sky inspired by images of the Serengeti. Here's the Serengeti, for example, and here's an image from the actual show. And you can see the relationship. Because The Lion King is more of a fantasy and a Shakespearean drama than it is a realistic play, we were encouraged to kind of develop a landscape that was more emotional than it was real. And so the color palette was a bit wider than you encounter in nature. You can see this is fairly naturalistic, but then there are other moments that were, highly colored and sort of highly charged in a way that perhaps you wouldn't encounter in the real Serengeti. Another show you might have remembered or might have experienced was Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. It opened in June 2011. It was unbelievably controversial, the longest preview period in Broadway history, unfortunately for me. It was inspired by the Marvel comic strips in terms of the design. It had brightly and vividly colored backgrounds. The scenery unfolded like the pages of a pop-up book. And it kind of looked like a massive three-dimensional version of a graphic novel on stage. These are some early renderings, and here are some images from the show itself. So you can see those backgrounds. You see how the light is filling in the details and helping to support the storytelling. The vivid colors, all very much related to the palettes of the artwork that we used as our research. One of the big challenges was the flying superheroes and supervillains that soared over every inch of the theater, and even women who were actually weaving a silk and swinging out on saffron fabrics over the audience heads. It was quite a challenge and quite interesting. Lots of embedded lights in scenery, even things like these taxi cabs that tracked back and forth had two sets of headlights and taillights, all part of the lighting design, all part of us trying to support the storytelling. The process was quite complex. It took 4 years to complete, not including the delays. And we had creative meetings, budgeting meetings, scheduling meetings, which didn't really work out too well in terms of scheduling. But then a year almost in the theater, there I am in the middle of this maelstrom. I guarantee that most theaters and most technical rehearsals don't look like this. But it was a fascinating challenge. And the thing is that Lion King, Spider-Man, no matter how big the show is, how large or small, the process is very similar to even that little choice that we saw here. The thing that I always ask, no matter what the size of the project is, I ask this question. How can I reveal the world of this play or musical in a way that's compelling, unique, and is faithful to the intention of my collaborators? Now, the parameters might change, the tools, the techniques may differ, but one thing is always a constant, and that is the ephemeral and magical substance we know as light. Thank you.